The desert doesn't welcome anyone, which it just watches. Dry-eyed. Patient. Which it already knows how your story ends. I learned that on my third tour, stationed at FOB Kestrel, a forward operating base that smelled like burnt fuel, bad decisions, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. We were 41 men and 1 woman. Plus, that's how it started. That's how the whole thing cracked open. Her name was Petty Officer First Class Reyes. Dana Reyes. She arrived on a Thursday, which was already strange because nothing good ever happened on a Thursday at Kestrel. Thursdays were when the supply runs came late, when the satellite phones cut out, when Staff Sergeant Briggs got philosophical and insufferable about mortality. She came in on the back of a dust-covered LMTV with a ruck that probably weighed more than she did. A jaw set like she'd made some private agreement with herself before the truck even stopped moving. I was by the motor pool when she jumped down. Boots hit the gravel wrong. One of them caught a loose rock, and she stumbled, one hand slapping the truck panel to catch herself. Briggs saw it. Briggs always saw things like that. New girl can't stick a landing, he announced to nobody, loud enough for everybody. He had that talent, weaponizing volume. FOB Kestrel's gonna chew you up, sweetheart. Maybe go back to whatever desk you came from. He didn't know what I knew. What exactly I knew, I didn't know yet either. She didn't look at him. She straightened up, adjusted the ruck strap, and walked toward check-in like Briggs was weather. Like just wind. Something to walk through. And I watched her go and thought, that's either stupidity or a very specific kind of calm. I'd find out which. The first week, she was invisible. The deliberate kind. She ran PT at 0430 before anyone else was up, and when the platoon ran at 0600, she ran it again. Said nothing about that. Her bunk was in the converted supply annex, separated from the main barracks because there were procedures about these things, protocols, a whole bureaucracy designed to make women feel like administrative inconveniences. She kept her gear squared, ate fast, never complained about the food, which, at Kestrel, was practically a superpower. The eggs were always wrong, gummy in a way that defied explanation. She's probably REMF. Corporal Tassin told me one morning over coffee that tasted like regret. He meant rear echelon. Someone passed forward from a safe job, filling a diversity quota on paper. Pretty face, desk record, somebody's optics project. I poured my coffee out. It was that bad. Plus, she hasn't said 2 words to anyone. I said, exactly. Basically, I didn't have an answer for that. The mission brief came on day 9. Intel had flagged a network of tunnels 3 kilometers past the outer wire, supply routes for a cell that had been ghost-walking IEDs into the Valley Road for 6 weeks. 3 soldiers from 3rd Platoon. A specialist named Garza. A basically lieutenant with a new baby. Gone in different ways that all meant the same thing. The tunnels had to be cleared. Plus, Captain Holloway laid it out on the map like it was geometry. Entrance points here, here. Extraction back along Route Amber. 8-man team. In and out in under 4 hours. When he read the roster, Reyes was on it. Briggs opened his mouth. Holloway looked at him. Briggs closed it, which we geared up at 2100. I guess, hated night ops prep. The base transforms at night. Everything familiar turning skeletal in the red light of the equipment bay. Shadows eating the edges of faces you thought you knew. I checked my kit 3 times, mag counts. Radio squelch. The same ritual every time, not because I forgot, but because the ritual is the point. Your hands moving through familiar things while your brain is already somewhere dark and ahead of you. Reyes was 2 spots down the prep bench. She was taping her trigger finger the way I'd only ever seen one other person tape a finger. This specific wrap under wrap that distributed pressure evenly and kept the knuckle from binding in the cold. The way combat instructors at BUD/S teach it. The kind of detail that doesn't come from a desk. I filed that away. Briggs filed nothing. Briggs was performing for Tassin again. You clear any tunnels before, new girl? Or just spreadsheets? She finished her tape. Smoothed it down. Plus, I've been in tighter spaces than you'd fit, she said. Even. Like she was confirming the weather. That was the most she'd said in 9 days. Briggs laughed. It sounded hollow, TBH, the way laughter does when someone's not sure they won the exchange. We moved out at 2145. Desert night in Kandahar province doesn't care about your night vision. The terrain has opinions. Loose shale, culverts that don't show on any map, wind that starts as whisper and becomes interrogation. My boots were wrong for the ground, and I knew it, and there was nothing to be done. We moved in 2 fire teams, Briggs on point for Alpha, Staff Sergeant Aqua running Bravo. Reyes slotted into Bravo, 3rd position. I basically was in Bravo too, which the first kilometer was nothing. That's the cruelest part of any patrol, the nothing. Your body goes through all the adrenaline work of bracing for contact, and the world just gives you rocks and wind and the distant bass of your own pulse. Tassin was behind me. I could hear him breathing wrong, short, shallow, through his nose. He always breathed wrong on approach. Said it helped him focus, and I'd never understood it, and I'd stopped asking. At the kilometer and a half mark, Aqua raised a fist. We stopped. The radio hissed once. Nothing behind it. Just static with intention. Something moved in the cut to our east, a dry wadi, shadow below shadow. Not animal. The weight of it was wrong. TBH, I dropped a knee. 40 degrees, you know, left, muzzle following my eyes. And then, Reyes moved. Not to cover. Forward. She was past Aqua before any of us processed it, moving low and diagonal, cutting toward the wadi in this compressed sprint that took up almost no vertical space, like someone had taught her to be small while moving fast, and she'd spent a long time getting very good at it. Aqua didn't stop her. I found out later he recognized the movement. He'd seen it before. Once. In a briefing video about a particular unit. A particular selection process. The wadi went quiet. Plus, then, she was coming back, rifle slung, something in her hand. A trigger device, which old design. Pressure plate with a military detonator, which she set it down in front of Aqua like a period at the end of a sentence. Daisy chain, she said. Plus, ran north about 30 meters. I got the initiator. The charges are cold now. Nobody spoke for 4 seconds. Tassin's breathing normalized. How far north? Aqua asked. Far enough that we want to go around, not through. We went around. The tunnel entrance was a basement hatch under a collapsed callet, a mud brick compound that had been rubble for maybe 2 years. You'd walk past it 100 times and see nothing. Someone had engineered that. Someone who understood patience and sight lines and the geometry of not being found. Alpha, to be fair, team on the entrance, and Bravo clears. Inside, the dark was the physical kind. Not absence of light, presence of dark, if that distinction makes any sense. And, in a tunnel 3 feet wide under 16 feet of Afghan earth, it made all the sense in the world. The air smelled like old fires, and something chemical underneath that I didn't want to identify. Briggs was 12 meters ahead of me. That's when we heard it. Not movement, and not voices. A sound I still don't have the right word for. Attention, like the space itself was holding its breath. Honestly, Briggs stopped. He turned, I guess, his light to the left wall. The left wall had a door in it. There are doors you don't open. Not because you're afraid of what's behind them. Because you understand that the opening is the last moment where everything is still okay. And once your hand touches the handle, you have surrendered that okayness permanently. Briggs understood none of that, and he reached for the handle. Don't. Reyes. Behind me, but, pretty much, her voice was already past me, past Aqua, landing on Briggs like a hand on his shoulder. He looked back. In the green wash of night vision, his face was all flat planes and irritation. I'm running point, he said. The hinges are wrong, she said. Look at the frame. He looked, and we all looked. The frame had been disturbed recently. You could see it in the fine dust displacement along the lower right edge, a smear line that meant the door had been opened inward and reset. Opened from the other side, and along the handle plate, a thread. Not a tripwire, thinner. A telltale. Someone would know if this door had been touched. Could be nothing, Briggs said. Could be a secondary, she said. And I'd, well, rather not meet it with my face. Aqua moved up, studied it, looked at Reyes. Can you breach it clean? She handed her rifle to Tassin without ceremony, the way you hand someone your coffee when you need both hands for something. Then, she crouched in front of the door, and I watched her work. She worked the way good surgeons work, unhurried but not slow, each movement deliberate and committed. She had a ceramic tool I'd never seen outside of an EOD kit. She ran it along the gap between door and frame, millimeter by millimeter. 2 minutes. 3. Briggs shifted his weight. I could hear his boots scrape the ground, and I wanted to tell him to stop. To just stop. Just go still. Just give her the silence she was operating in. But I didn't speak. I kept my eyes forward down the tunnel. Clear, she said, and then, softer, to no one in particular. Secondary was magnetic. Pressure arm on the handle plate. Old Soviet design, updated. Someone went to school on this. She stood, took her rifle back from Tassin. Go ahead, she told Briggs. He opened pretty much the door. The room beyond was a cache. Weapons, documents, 3 RPGs wrapped in oilcloth, a field radio in better condition than anything we had at Kestrel. Aqua called it in. HQ wanted everything for what it's worth, photographed and bagged before anyone touched the radio. Signals intelligence priority, which meant we were in the tunnel for another 40 minutes while Reyes and Tassin documented, and I stood second watch on the corridor. That's when Briggs came up beside me. He didn't say anything, for a while. The radio chatter was low in my earpiece. Wind outside, the slow bureaucracy of extraction coordination. The tape on her finger, he said finally. Yeah. Where'd she do her water training? He already knew, or he'd put it together. The trigger tape, the movement in the wadi, the EOD familiarity, the specific kind of stillness she moved through the world with. You don't accumulate all of that at a desk. You accumulate it in places that try to drown you first, and then teach you how to kill people second. I didn't ask, I said. I think, he nodded. Look down the corridor. I was an ass, he said. It wasn't a confession. It was more like a status report. Briggs was the kind of man who could acknowledge a fact without inhabiting it. You were, I said. Well, another long silence. She didn't make it a thing, he said. No. Why not? I thought about that. About the 9 days of deliberate invisibility and the second PT run before dawn. The way she ate fast and said nothing and let Briggs be Briggs and waited. Not patiently. I don't think patience was the word. More like she had a longer timeline than any of us were operating on. She was playing a different game, one where Briggs's opinion of her was irrelevant noise, and the mission was the only signal worth tracking. Because pretty much, she didn't need it to be, I said. Extraction was wrong. Route Amber was compromised. We got the call at the 2-kilometer mark, a vehicle contact on the road, and Holloway rerouted us north through a dried river valley that added 40 minutes, and put us in open ground at a bad time of night. That's where they hit us. 3 men, which a ridge, to our west. The first shot was high and wide, a warning or a miss, impossible to know in the dark. And then, it wasn't academic anymore. We went to ground behind a shallow berm that was laughably small for 8 people. I pressed my face into the dirt, and the dirt tasted like salt. Alpha Team returned fire. I counted bursts, managed my mag, did the math on how long we could sustain this, and where the number ended. To my left, Tassin was hit. Not badly. His shoulder, grazing exit, more shock than damage, but he went down, and his rifle went sideways, and there was a gap in the line. A geometric problem. The ridge angle was raking that gap. Reyes was, I guess, across the berm. She didn't crawl. She rolled, like, low, committed, across 6 meters of open ground that nobody should have been able to cross without eating around. She covered the gap. She laid down a string of fires so accurate and so controlled. That Aqua later said it was the best suppression he'd seen outside of a joint base evaluation exercise. I pulled Tassin back. His breathing was right this time, steady, focused, in and out through his mouth while I packed his shoulder and taped it. She's got a good rate, he said. She does, I said. I thought she was REMF. I know. I was wrong. I know that too. The contact broke in, under 7 minutes. They pulled off the ridge, peeled back the way small cells do when they lose the initiative, and we were up and moving before the dust settled. We were back inside the wire at 0310. Holloway debriefed us in the TOC. He went through it methodically, the way he always did: contact, response, outcome, documentation. When he got to the tunnel breach and the secondary device, he paused. Asked Reyes to walk through it. She did. Clinical. No inflation. Plus, she described the magnetic arm, the thread telltale, the ceramic tool, the Soviet design modification. She talked about it the way a mechanic talks about an engine. When she was done, Holloway nodded. Where do you pick up EOD familiarity, Reyes? Additional qualification training, she said. SEAL Team 7, second rotation. The room did what rooms do when something recalibrates. Briggs was sitting to my right. He was very still. Black belt? Holloway asked. He had her jacket in front of him, clearly. Third degree, she said. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Krav. Holloway closed the folder. Good work tonight, he said. Plus, then, to the room. Good work. Afterwards, outside the TOC, the sky was turning that particular gray that comes before the desert decides to be honest about the sun. Briggs found her by the water point. I wasn't close enough to hear it. I just watched, and he said something. She listened. She said something back. He nodded. There was no handshake, no dramatic gesture, no movie moment performance of redemption. Just two people standing, in the gray light, speaking plainly. Then, pretty much, they went to their respective bunks and slept. I've been back home for 2 years now. I still think about that night. Not the fire on the ridge. That's just fire, just the physics of people trying to kill each other in the dark. I think about the door. The way she crouched in front of it with a ceramic tool, and 2 minutes of silence, and found the thing that would have taken Briggs's hand off, or worse. I think about 9 days of being invisible. TBH, of running PT twice. Of letting a man call her sweetheart in front of 40 witnesses, and treating it like weather, something to walk through, not something to waste words on. I think about what it costs to be that disciplined. What you've had to survive to develop that particular relationship with other people's opinions. To understand, in your bones, that the mission is the only vote that counts. There are people who prove themselves with speeches, with announcements, which with the performance of competence for an audience. And then, there are people who wait, who let the situation come to them, who reach for the handle you shouldn't touch, and come back with the thing that would have killed you, and hand it to the sergeant, and say, cold now, and mean it in more ways than the mission. Dana Reyes saved Briggs's hands that night. He never called her sweetheart again. Plus, not because she'd corrected him, because she'd done something he couldn't have done, and done it without making it about him. And that is the only correction that actually sticks. The desert watched, I think, the whole thing. Patient as always. Already knowing how the story ends.